Hola, bienvenido. This is Rauta with a Spanish black metal review. This time we have a band called Balmog with an album called Eve. If you have been into Spanish black metal, you probably know the band already. They have been in the business for almost 20 years. Their previous album was actually pretty goddamn cool. A one called Vacuum with V letters. And back then I compared, and I wasn't exactly the only one doing that comparison, them to Watain with certain kind of a more melodic approach with a little bit of atmospheric parts and all that stuff. And this release, once again, out through War Anthem Records, is pretty much stepping the same way. Now, because of the previous albums, I had quite a bit of expectations for Balmog. I mean, that was actually one of the better albums of its release year 2018 or so. And this time I was like hoping, okay, I hope Balmog is as good as the previous one, because the one before that wasn't exactly anything but a lukewarm experience. Unfortunately, Eve turns out to be a minor disappointment. Minor might be even easy way to say it, because in fact this is nowhere near as good as the previous one, and maybe even not as good as the one before that. And I'll try to explain why. First of all, let's try with the basic idea. Balmog is still doing the kind of a Watain kind of a black metal. You have those rather easy to approach parts. One could say kind of a mainstreamish approach to black metal in so many ways. First of all, the album isn't exactly raw. It's more melodic, soothing, kind of a nice for being extreme metal album. Also, the production is actually very approachable, but not in the sense what you would expect from a black metal band. I would even go as far as to say Eve is a diet version of black metal. Before you get mad about it or let that all sink, let's put it this way. There are bands that will go for rawer and more extreme ways. That might be about production, songwriting and all that stuff. And then there are bands which are kind of rounding the corners and making it for easy to people to step into the darker side of metal. Now, whether you are against that kind of a thing, bringing black metal towards mainstream audience, or just don't like the softer kind of stuff, that doesn't really matter. If you're one of those people, Eve is not for you. Then again, if you are more into the kind of a safer side of black metal things, because it doesn't sound exactly too primitive or raw or anything like that. And if you are into more melodic, easy to approach, kind of a sugar-coated black metal, or just easy to listen kind of a stuff, then Eve might be right up your alley. The thing here with Vacuum was that it made these elements click, work nicely, and the result was actually very enjoyable album, even if it wasn't exactly original. Eve, I guess, tries to push the same buttons, but manages to do something in a way that doesn't just sound that good. Now the thing here is, there is nothing fundamentally wrong with the type of metal Eve is doing, unless you really hate that kind of a diet version of black metal. But the thing here is, the songs are not exactly good. I mean, this is very listenable, but at the same time I feel it's also very forgettable. It's almost like a dummified version of Watain. I mean, the new Watain album was exactly good. And even though one could say Watain is going to the direction where it's going to get more audience because it's less raw, less crude and all that stuff, like earlier works, it's basically going to the direction of what for example, Behemoth is doing. Well, Balmog is only trying to do that stuff. I am not saying they are copycats as such, but to get that kind of idea going, you have to really have very strong songwriting. Songwriting that isn't exactly prone to be laughed at or just mocked because you're doing the kind of a diet version. I mean, it's really cool to do melodic black metal if you have really killer melodies. It's cool to have the kind of a softer production if you make it work, especially through songwriting. And the list goes on. Now, Eve sounds like a compromise. It's not exactly the softer kind of metal which would work because, they're really embracing that stuff here. But it's also not working as a black metal album because it feels kind of too lightweight for that matter. It's almost like the so-called melodic death metal, not really doing death metal, not still being melodic enough with the kind of extreme vocals for the big mainstream audience. So I feel Eve is like crossroads. It's gonna define whether or not Balmog is going to slide away from the black metal territory or whether they're going to take a new turn to closer to their roots and all that stuff. Now, for some people, especially the kind who want the softer kind of a lightweight black metal, Eve is definitely worth checking out. But for people who want still dark, raw, or some kind of a sinister music, Eve is probably a pass. Of course, you decide for yourself. For me, this is kind of a lukewarm experience, and I hope Balmog is going back to the ways of vacuum sooner than later. But if not, bye-bye. That goes also for you. Bye-bye. Check out the links provided in the description box for music.